Good morning. Thanks everybody for joining today. So as we all know, as we start down this journey of the prospering in the industry 4.0 landscape, so manufacturers must establish that solid networking infrastructure platform, both wired and wireless. So that supports not only expansibility as the network grows, but also a foundation for a secure and risk-free environment to run manufacturing. So in this session today, what we're going to do is we're going to navigate the core elements of this infrastructure. We're going to talk about automation, the state of the industry and manufacturing. We're going to talk about security, and we're going to have a discussion on wireless as well. And then we will follow up the discussion with some wrap-up items and kind of the why we're talking about this architecture and the value that we bring to this overall architecture. So if we want to go ahead and advance to the slides, we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start first by introducing my team here. So my name is Kevin Wood. I'm a Chief IoT Architect in IoT Sales for Cisco. And I've been in the manufacturing industry for quite a number of years. So probably 25 years plus in the industry itself. So I'm going to start on the left here with my distinguished colleague, Mr. Paul Didier. So, Paul, do you want to say something briefly here about your title and role?
Yes, I'm a solution architect in our industrial IoT business unit, and I've been focused on developing solutions for manufacturing and production facilities.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. So we're going to keep moving to the right here, and the next is Tim Householder with WWT. So, Tim.
Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tim Householder. I've been with WWT for a little over, or coming up on 3 years now, but I've been working with manufacturing clients for over 15 years and helping develop solutions to solve some of the challenges and bring customers into a foundational architecture that they can build from. As my role as an industry advisor at WWT, I work across all of our practices and technologies to be able to develop those solutions.
Great, Tim. Thanks for being here with us today. Next, let's go to Andre.
Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm actually the co-founder of Fluid Mesh Networks, a company that got acquired in 2020 by Cisco, and since then, I'm actually leading the IoT wireless team.
All right, thank you, Andrea. Next up will be, last but not least, I should say, was Dino with E80.
Hi guys, I'm Dino Hopek. I'm the technical manager with E80. I've been in automation for about 13 years with E80, doing the installations in our US and Canada market.
Great. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the stage here, and then we're going to have a series of kind of panel discussions around the key topics of industry automation, wireless mobility, and security. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit to set the stage here. So I always like to start talking about some of the common challenges that we see across manufacturing and in a lot of ways the industry in general. So the first is, we always see this, is that lack of OT visibility. In some capacity, either a zero or very limited visibility. And we're going to talk about it as we get into security and automation of why this is so important going forward. The other aspect is we have older manufacturing systems out there with operating systems that can't or not easily can be patched. Some of those are, really older and no longer supported by the manufacturers that control machines. So we have to start thinking about, from a security, how we do compensating controls around those systems. The next is lack of and or limited segmentation. So we're going to talk about the whole notion of this diagram here on the right really starts digging into this notion of segmentation. And that diagram on the left is a example of a framework that's a very well-known framework that most of you have probably heard of, being the Purdue model. So there's some key aspects of that diagram with the IDMZ and really segmenting OT and IT, and then really thinking about your process or your function of your factory and how can you segment that network into different levels or zones. The other aspect of this manufacturing complexity, I would say, and taking us to Industry 4, is the whole complexity of secure remote access. So historically, we've all known that, third-party VPNs various other ways to knock holes in firewalls has been kind of the path forward. Once you're in, then using jump servers. Well, we're going to introduce the notion of a easier and more safe and secure way to actually handle remote access. What we often see in OT as well, there's a limited skill set around security. There's usually a lack of granular access control. That goes hand in hand with visibility. One of our favorite taglines is you can't predict what you can't see. And this goes that you can't provide granular access control to something you can't see. So this will tie directly back to visibility as well. As I talked about in the intro, that whole notion of having a scalable infrastructure really coming into play right now with the escalation of IoT devices out there in the industry. And AI is only going to accelerate the advancement of those sensors and/or devices. And then finally, there's an operational efficiency aspect of this. So the visibility tools not only give you visibility into the assets, their vulnerabilities, but also what's going on operationally in the environment, who's making changes, who did what, when, and where. And then a lot of you have probably experienced there's often a stressed IT-OT relationship. And historically, in the industry evolution, a lot of these environments have been totally separate and shielded from each other. So the notion of building kind of the wall around the castle to protect that OT asset from itself and from others, because there was not a lot of controls, a lot of air gap networks, a lot of dark pools of data. So what we're trying to really think about now is how do we bring the two environments together? Because in order to get to Industry 4 and 5 and beyond, that barrier has to dissolve. So we have to get access to those machines, to that data, in order to make sound business decisions and leverage things that are new and upcoming and industry changing, like AI. And as I talked about it, there is a huge amount of unconnected machines out there. And with unconnected machines, there's unconnected data points that we could actually leverage and use to actually drive good sound decision makings in the industry. Now, if we take a step back, and we're going to call this the whole notion of a new class of industrial network and security that's going to be needed to really take us to that next level of smart factory automation and/or Industry 4. So the first one here we'll talk about is, and we've mentioned it a couple of times already, is the taking this production infrastructure and making it flexible and scalable. So this is a high-performing, manageable network that we can actually expand up and down as need be, allow for vast connections as we're talking about in wireless, making sure that we have the correct RF coverage and the correct spectrum design so we can actually handle this growth. And as we build on that high-performing infrastructure, and we're going to overlay or embed inside that infrastructure the whole notion of asset visibility and cybersecurity. So the largest asset that you're going to have, or the largest sensor that you're going to have out there on the front line, will be the network itself. So this whole visibility is going to be a point where we can build that asset database, block threats, and then protect the operations. Very important to know that it's not a bolt-on or an add-on. It is integrated into this infrastructure. Now, all that's going to culminate into the notion of boosting your efficiency, taking that risk of downtime out. And as we said with operations, that if something does occur, somebody makes a change to an asset and there is downtime, this is going to help us actually reduce the troubleshooting time and actually get machines and devices back up. Also going to give you access to that remote access for machines. So if I need to get experts in to help with that remotely, there's a much easier, much secure way to do that. The next is that infrastructure has to add flexibility around mobility. And as we'll see here in a few minutes, there's lots of different areas of mobility as we go through. And there's going to be some key decision points around use cases that you'll end up making to pick the right technology as you go forward in mobility. And then finally, the whole notion of this advanced production innovation. This is fast connection to apps when you need it. So being able to connect to private data centers, being able to get access to the cloud, being able to operate in a hybrid mix of that environment, and do that at the speed and with lack of concern about latency and issues that may come in a legacy or aged infrastructure. So the whole notion of these OT networks is we're going to be building this OT environment based on these IT best practices. And that's where a lot of miscommunication and confusion comes in, because the IT infrastructure, which has been focused on so long, is really proliferating both security and infrastructure wise into the OT environment. And that causes some undue stress as we go through that. So with that being said, if we want to start the first audience poll. So
Yes.
poll number one. As you think about your industrial manufacturing, your network, is it helping you achieve these SMART objectives? And there's some multiple choice here. And we're really looking to understand, is it an enabler, or do you feel like it's, a hindrance currently today? So while we're doing that, and while you're answering that, we're going to continue on and start our first round of panel discussions, just in the essence of time. So as we go through, advance the slide. I'm going to start talking about the category of industrial automation innovation. So we're going to take a few minutes here and use the panel. We're going to leverage Paul and Tim for this particular round of discussions. So let's start with you, Paul. So as we start talking about manufacturing, let's discuss these key foundational elements and what it really takes to make up a manufacturing architecture. So take a minute and take us through that.
Sure. I want to say spent a lot of time a few weeks ago at Hanover Messe in Germany. It's the biggest, largest manufacturing event in the world. And I was struck by, there's so much innovation coming into this space. Companies were talking about all of the advantages of artificial intelligence, machine learning, all to improve operational equipment effectiveness, uptime, product quality, safety, all these wonderful innovations. But one thing that was really clear, and many of the folks at some of these large hyperscalers and large AI companies and consultants complained a lot about, there's a lack of data to drive the AI machines to teach them and to get them actually processing data and giving some inferences. And I wanted to laugh, and I said, I thought to myself, there's plenty of data out there. The data is there in these environments. And the first thing you need to be able to do is connect to it and then start gathering that data and processing that data. So you need an end-to-end ubiquitous network to connect, all this up and to get these rich new applications, giving you, wonderful new insights and inferences and, and improving your production operations. So it starts with a really good network. Wired and wireless connectivity are critical. You're going to be bringing in a lot more applications. So being able to tighten down the security in your environment is going to be critical. You're going to want to know which applications should be accessing which machines, which data, and managing that closely. And I think that's where the network too is going to be really critical to help managing, not just the connectivity, but the security in those environments. So, and then, that helps reduce down. I've seen customers, significantly become much greener, much more sustainable because they reduced energy utilization, they reduce waste, they improve yield in their environments. All of these are wonderful things. So it's really awesome to see. One of the other things I've also noted in the industry is car manufacturing, especially EVs. There's been quite a bit of investment around the globe in that recently, and they've really kind of moved and shifted much of the production, as you see kind of here in this picture. In combustion engine auto manufacturing, there was a lot of conveyance in a factory. And now a lot of that conveyance has been switched over to AGVs and AMRs. Instead of having these big structures that move things around, you put things on AGVs and AMRs and move them around, and your plant becomes much more flexible, much more, modifiable and updatable, as it comes to shifting product around, shifting all of your assets around. So I've been really impressed with some of the capabilities that wireless is bringing into this space. And so those are kind of like some of the big highlights, but it's just wonderful to see all this innovation. And I really do think Cisco and industrial networking is at the center of it, because without that, and there are still major challenges in the environment, but without that good connectivity, none of the rest of the stuff really works well.
I think it's a great point, because you start, especially when you start hearing the advent of AI, people start talking about the need for actually training models with synthetic data, and we haven't tapped into access to all the data that we actually have. So great point.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's take a look at the poll question results for number one. I think we have some answers probably coming in here. So question was, again, is your industrial network helping you achieve? So 9% said no, it's frequently causing us outages, unplanned downtime. Probably the majority of people said adding new network equipment for production takes a lot of time. So we've had a lot of customers here to talk about flexibility of assembly line changes or renewals of assembly line. And without that modular or unified architecture, it could take months, if not weeks, right? And the idea that some of these manufacturers are getting that time down to days to be able to refresh an assembly line or retool a manufacturing line. And then I guess number two is it takes our team an unacceptably long time to troubleshoot and fix issues. So I think this just kind of reinforces where a lot of us feel we are. And there's always that continuous room for improvement. So let's go on to pull up Tim here. Let's hit a question around outcomes. So as we think about this digital plant manufacturing, what are some of those key outcomes that you've seen customers realize by implementing that true digital manufacturing architecture?
Yeah, Kevin. So, much of what...
You're good.
Now?
Yes, you're good.
Good. Is many of our clients being on that journey, right? And they're at different maturity levels when it comes to that. But much of the outcomes that they start seeing is some of what Paul was talking about in terms, and what you highlighted at the beginning was they start to realize what they actually have, how it's communicating, and start to create an understanding of the environment. And what that leads to, through understanding, you can create strategy, right? Whether it be on your network connectivity, whether it be on your hosting platforms, your applications, in the security realm, or what you're doing with data, and bringing in stakeholders into all of that. So the immediate things when we're on this journey with our clients is many times we get into a situation where it's taking that step back and saying, okay, we've done these things for a number of years, and we've done it a particular way for a number of years, but maybe it's time to rethink that. So in our industry practice here at WWT, we work with a lot of varying manufacturing or heavy industry customers, everything from biopharma to semiconductor manufacturing to discrete manufacturing and CPG. So they have different needs, right? There's not a one size fits all for that. And the way that our team tends to go to market with the considerations and to engage with our clients on this is really split it out into connectivity, compute, protection, so your security and your data. And they should not be just, thought about singularly, right? They should be interwoven, and they should be thought about from start to end, and bringing in the different stakeholders in that. So what people start to do in that is to say, hey, maybe my 3-tier architecture, back to this comment here, OT networks must be built with IT best practices. I would probably tweak that a little bit and say OT networks can take advantage of IT best practices. There's going to be nuances in the manufacturing sectors that don't allow them to adopt what IT would be considering best practices in their environment. But OT networks and OT teams can definitely take advantage of what IT teams have been taking advantage for a long time. So things like moving to two-tier architectures and getting automation and scale through that. Talking about creating hyper-converged infrastructure and compute and edge architectures and moving to cloud. Those are all things that they can start to take advantage of and plan for as well. But then to Paul's point, you get security. So a lot, and then you can start to utilize the data, to your point about moving into that industry, what people are saying is industry 5.0, which is we've connected a bunch of stuff, we see a bunch of stuff. What are we doing with all this stuff? Actually creating the value out of what you're connecting and what you're seeing in these networks. And so some of these outcomes are iterative. You're going to have your very first outcomes, which is your understanding, like I said. But then what you start to do is deliver value to your stakeholders, to your business as you move on this journey, giving them real-time data along with their trending data so they can make decisions. They can see holistic processes. They can compare locations globally for business decisions to be made and for better understanding. And then you get more into the tactical operational aspect of it, is giving your teams the tools and the insights that they need to solve problems or to address challenges and create new strategies in that space. And tactically, what a lot of the clients are seeing when they start to approach it and start to consider some of these nuances for themselves is always on or high resilience.
I think we had some technical difficulties with Tim. Or here he's back.
The ability to scale, greater visibility into their processes.
So looks like Tim's having some internet problems here. So I think really what we want to talk about from an outcome perspective is, and wrapping that conversation up,
and
inevitably your outcome is
they even start to get that visibility for say, oh, okay, well, these are the functions.
So Tim, if you can hear us, you're breaking up pretty bad. So let's talk about, we think about that outcome. Inevitably, the outcome is connecting the unconnected, right? So the items that aren't connected, as Paul talked about before. And when we do that, we introduce a lot of confusion and stresses. And what we're trying to do is to bring that IT and OT world together to actually leverage and scale that. So Paul, let's switch over to you here, and let's talk a little bit more hyper-focused about this connectivity and visibility aspect. And why is that so important in this new era of manufacturing industry as we're going into 4, into 5, and beyond? Why is visibility so important? You're muted, Paul.
The visibility is important on a number of levels. It starts with, being able to access data that you may never have been able to access before. Getting telemetry out of some of the machines that are on your floor, getting data out of sensors and actuators in your manufacturing environment, and being able to to use that for predictive maintenance, product quality improvements, all of that. It also is important from a cybersecurity perspective, right? To be able to understand what is actually connected on your plant, who's talking to who, what are they saying to each other. Major companies that have cyber security insurance policies are being asked to prove that they understand better what's in their networks, what's the security stance of the assets in their network, and show that they're making ongoing improvements to reduce the security risk in their production environments or face higher premiums from the industry. So this visibility is really critical for improving your processes, improving your cybersecurity stance in the environment, and just having an ability to really drive innovation in your production environments. There's one customer I work with. They make parts for the auto industry, batteries specifically, and they've been focused on collecting lots and lots of data from all aspects of their production environment, and they're actually now capable of even delivering digital twin of every battery cell that they make based on they've collected so much data throughout the manufacturing process. And that's a bit of a competitive advantage compared to a lot of other vendors in the space, and a really important one for the auto makers who are using that equipment. It helps them in terms of their supply chain. It helps them in terms of their managing and optimizing, improving and reducing challenges later on when those as those batteries go into cars and actually get used out on the road. So it's this visibility, this connectivity and visibility is a really critical consideration moving forward, and something the industry still hasn't really fully tackled. I see so many networks based on islands of connectivity and disconnected networks, and a lot of that's going to have to change, even in brownfield environments.
Yeah, and even when you talk to customers and manufacturers out there who say they have a segmentation strategy, but if you flip that question around and ask how they feel about their asset inventory, and then they'll say, not so good. But you can't protect what you can't see. So it makes you draw into question how good your segmentation strategy really is without visibility. So let's go on and start talking a little bit about security here. So if we want to pull up the second poll question, please. So what are the security challenges you face in your day-to-day operations? So there's several. I won't read through all the options. You can read through those. Hopefully, there's very few people that say that they're completely happy. But let's take a look at this poll as we go through. And in the meantime, while we're answering that, we're going to go and have another discussion around security. So, Tim, is Tim back with us? Looks like Tim may have dropped. So, Paul, I'm going to pick on you here since Tim isn't with us. So, if we start talking about that whole notion of describing the elements of that connected manufacturing security stack. So what are, and how we break them down into phases, and how should we build on that to achieve true security?
Sure. We kind of have in Cisco and in the IIoT space, we kind of have a bit of a journey, a model to kind of help customers think about tackling such a large problem. It takes baby steps first before you can, eventually get to your goal, your objective. And it starts with kind of like doing some foundational things. Most customers are there, but it's still not, taken for granted. But things like having a firewall and segmenting your production environments from the rest of your enterprise or whatever else you have in terms of connectivity, but kind of like separate that. There's a distinct difference in terms of operational policies, security policies, organizational responsibilities. And so establishing a firewall to kind of like help manage that is a really critical consideration. Moving on, we suggest, do the anti-malware, do the multi-factor authentication. Those are some basic things that a lot of manufacturers still haven't fully tackled and that are a large source of risk and threats in the environment. But then as you kind of get some of that basics down, moving into, having this deeper understanding of what's on my network, this cybersecurity visibility is really critical. It is somewhat dependent on having a good network, but there's some ways to kind of like overcome some networking challenges, but having a visibility, what's connected, who's talking to who, and what are my security risks in these environments is critical. And then once you kind of establish, that understanding of what's on the network, who's talking to who, where are my risks, you can start developing these segmentation policies and start, deploying them back into the network to maintain those guardrails on here's the zones, here's the conduits that I think are correct and good for my production environment, and make sure that they're actually in place and enforced by the network. And then you definitely want to integrate this whole environment into your larger enterprise cybersecurity processes and models. Our recent acquisition of Splunk is going to be a wonderful step forward in terms of helping our customers integrate the rich information from these environments into cybersecurity tools such as Splunk, that are going to help you, with incident and event management, and really manage any security risks that kind of come up in your environment. So that's our process. It's, put in the foundation, get some visibility, apply segmentation, and then integrate things into your overall enterprise cybersecurity processes.
So let's dig into something you said here. We talked about getting visibility, and we talked about the next stage of segmentation. Yes. So connect the dots here for us a little bit. When we start talking about this visibility data, how do I integrate that and allow that to be part of the foundation for my segmentation strategy?
So this visibility data, part of what it should be able to tell you is what's on the network, who's talking to who, and those are, and what are they saying to each other? And that's all really important information. And understanding and validating that that's what, should be happening. Should this PLC be talking to, another third party's server in your production environment when there's actually no real justification for it? Is there a reason that there's a cellular backdoor in this asset that has actual communication and access to most or almost everything in your production environment? And being able to understand what are those flows is really critical. And then by coming in and applying some segmentation policies, that is going to be critical as you want to take advantage of AI, ML, and a lot of these rich capabilities, into your production environment. You're going to want to be able to make determinations of, is this AI program from this vendor supposed to be able to access, every robot or every PLC in my environment? Likely no. Maybe yes, but likely no. And then, you want to be able to have the ability to determine who should be able to see what data, which applications should be able to access which assets, and have a little bit more control over those kind of environments. That data is really, really valuable. It's as a manufacturer, it's yours. And I think you'll just want to manage your assets, manage access to your resources in a way that's beneficial to yourself as a manufacturer.
So, and you mentioned one thing there that's going to kind of tee off into the next question for you. You mentioned, why does that asset have a modem or an access device coming into it? And probably for management, right? And it's probably because of shadow OT, IT, or shadow technology, whatever we want to say.
Right.
So going back and looking at those, that's been an ongoing challenge for a number of years. That I need to get a vendor in. They need to work on that machine. So talk to us about how we're changing that and how we're addressing the new approach to getting more of a zero trust access policy.
Right. Yes, I have to say the remote access is again a really critical point, and a lot of companies, a lot of vendors solved it by putting cellular backdoors into their equipment, into their assets. Understand that's kind of like the shortest path to this solving this remote access problem. But again, as I was saying, as we were kind of like saying, the whole objective here is to put in a good network and put good security into your manufacturing environments, so that you don't have to put in cellular backdoors, that you can bring your remote partners, your engineers and other folks into your environment through your own security policies, through your own security mechanisms, so that you have understanding of who's accessing what in my production environment. And I think that makes a lot of sense. part of it is to also give them secure remote access into those environments. And as Cisco, putting in our networks, there's a huge expectation that you're using our networks. We should have things like remote access. That's part of the basic concept of bringing in rich, capable internet Cisco networking into an environment. So I should be able to have that. So we've actually over the last few years developed a tool, Secure Equipment Access. It is cloud-based, but it really does a really good job of allowing IT folks to set security policies for remote engineers, remote vendors, partners, and all that to come into the environment. Allows the OT folks to give that access to their remote partners and engineers in such a way that they're able to audit, review, even potentially kill or manage this remote access, and then also gives those remote folks access into the environment. We use a combination of our network infrastructure, software running in those environments, as well as the cloud-based applications to deliver this really secure, really easy to use, and really functional capability, secure remote access, secure equipment access. That's a new capability feature Cisco supplies, usually based on using our network infrastructure.
Awesome. So
hi, Tim.
Tim is back. Sorry, we've been moving on, Tim. With secure equipment access here, so if I set up somebody, let's say, access to a particular asset between 1 and 2 o'clock p.m., what happens at 2:01?
If that was the time, 2 o'clock was the time frame that you were designed to stop it, the system will warn and then stop. May give the operational guy, if he's managing or watching it, an opportunity to extend it. But there's some definite controls that say, this is what was originally set up. Either somebody else has to approve extending it, or we're going to stop the session at 2 o'clock as specified.
Yeah, I think it's a key point, because historically the problem is when you've manually built these security measures to allow people in, the thing about it is going back and closing the door. And without having an automated way, that we all understand how firewall rules and legacy security policies just grow and grow exponentially. And it's because they don't get undone. So that's awesome. Thanks for covering that, Paul. So let's go ahead and we're going to shift gears a bit to wireless. And we're going to talk about, I could call it mobility instead of wireless. But let's go ahead and pull up, before you do that, let's pull up the poll question results for number 2. And let's take a look at that on security. So what are the cybersecurity challenges you face in your operations? We have essentially perimeter-only firewalls. We don't have sufficient visibility in connected industrial assets. That's consistently what we see. People are concerned about visibility. And then we have a flat unsegmented network. And that's pretty common in a lot of these older manufacturing environments as well. So pretty consistent on what we're seeing there. And then let me scroll down. I think there's one more result, or a few more results. Use manual switch configurations for access control. Absolutely. Setting up remote access is complex, and we're not able to adequately monitor. That's what Paul was just talking about with SEA. That is 100% accurate. And then there's several people that have all the security controls where they need them. So I will say that I'm always looking around the corner, right, for the next security vulnerability or the next way in. So, but if there's compensating controls and various things to monitor and good, then we should actually be good there. So I'm going to drop this poll, and what we're going to do here, we're going to kick another audience poll up before we go into mobility. So if we take 3A, audience question 3A, and we post that. So which wireless technologies do you use in your factory? So this is going to be a baseline for us. And Wi-Fi, private 5G, ultra reliable wireless backhaul, or anything else that you may use. Could be LoRaWAN or other technologies. And then finally, you don't trust wireless. And there are organizations out there that have a very big concern around the security and or viability of that wireless environment. So that's why that option is there. So let's move on into a panel discussion while we're letting everybody answer that. And we're going to start with you, Andrea. So let's think about industrial mobility and how does it enhance that whole smart manufacturing environment? What does it bring to bear and do for us?
Yeah, Kevin, we heard from Paul and team, how important is collecting data and how important is, connectivity on a factory floor nowadays. And I truly believe that wireless, it's really at the base of this industrial automation revolution. So having a technology that can allow, connecting all sensors and your assets on the factory floor, in a wireless way, gives you, greater flexibility, because you need to eliminate all those, cabling, and allows you also to reconfigure your assembly lines or, your production lines. And then, think the flexibility that is provided to workers also on the factory floor. You can have your employees, walking and managing and controlling, receiving data, from all the different machines connected to the network over the air. And nowadays we also see, solutions where you have augmented reality pushed to the workers on the factory floor as well. And at the same time, wireless can reduce, the cost, the overall cost, because, if you compare to, lay down fiber or copper, that, might be very complex and expensive, while, using wireless technology, might reduce those costs, not just at the installation time, but also over time and maintaining the system. And so, really the key now is selecting the right technology, that gives you support to industrial protocol and, and gives you the level of reliability that you need to run your operations.
Yeah, that's great. So building on that, so I'm going to come to you next, Dino. So as we think about that, what are the most common wireless technologies did you see from your customers on that factory floor environment today? And after, we look at those, what type of applications are they being used for?
So right now, most of the brownfields that we currently have in operation are using Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5. Those are the simple networks where they can manage the existing hardware that was in the plant and extend it to the distribution or to the warehouse portion where the AGVs are interacting with the block storage or ceiling to, floor to ceiling racks. Those networks are kind of the old style. The new ones, the new customers, greenfields, are requesting Wi-Fi 6. Some of them are asking about Wi-Fi 6E, in which case the industrial support for Wi-Fi 6E equipment is not up to par yet. We're kind of waiting for some of those devices to come out to the market. And at the same time, they're asking, okay, can we try to use private LTE, or can we try to use URWB to try and mitigate the fact that the Wi-Fi is not capable of dealing with all of these different devices that need to work in our warehouse? That may be in a lot of cases where they don't know whether the people that are walking the floor that are using their laptops actually need to connect to the LGBs live, and what that means for the wireless infrastructure in terms of the impact to the running production. So in most cases, if we have production downtime, we want to understand whether that's at the IT level, at the OT level, and what impact it has to our running fleet. How do we keep the LGBs moving when one of those incidents occur at a different level of the network segment?
Okay, that's really interesting. Now, you talked about how you're seeing it. So what are some of the challenges of rolling these different technologies out on the floor as we think about wireless and automation hand in hand?
I think the biggest one is trying to explain what the need is from the machines. Most of the time, someone that audits the network on the floor, if we're in a distribution center, will walk around with their laptop and try to see, okay, am I still connected? Can I get a voice call going over Teams or something to connect on my Outlook while I'm walking the plant? But the machines don't necessarily care about how much data is being sent through. They care about having an always on, very low latency connection with no packet loss. So in that case, trying to ensure that the coverage of the Wi-Fi at the walking height, so where you would have your laptop versus where the antenna is mounted on a running LGV, can make a difference to the wireless performance of the AGVs inside of that warehouse. And depending on what they store, in a lot of cases, if they have like beverage in cans, that's a rough environment for RF signals. And so we see performance degradation when we're inside of very deep drive-in racks and the Wi-Fi can no longer penetrate or get to the portion of the warehouse, like outside of trailers where the LGVs are going outside of the warehouse and actually loading inside of a trailer. You still need an always on low latency connection, and they can't lose connection to the master in our case, where it's directing them on their next mission. That, I think, has been the biggest challenge to explain. Just because your Wi-Fi, your cell phone or your laptop in that warehouse has a connection doesn't mean that you're pinging a server or pinging the device every couple hundred milliseconds to try and keep an active connection and keep that fleet moving in the warehouse. That's been our greatest challenge so far.
So if I heard you correctly, those that are tackling like a wireless survey the legacy way with laptops and stationary devices are really exposing themselves to some problems when they start talking about assets that are mobile, moving, and or as environments change with emballage and other things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And with URWB, we've tried both private LTE and URWB, and we can see that on a priority network without roaming, when you're going through doors, when you're going through tunnels, when you're going through production areas that may have power cabinets or just signal attenuation due to the number of clients that are connected in that area, that makes a huge difference. The range that it has, the latency, the amount of packet loss is just a 10x in terms of improvement from the Wi-Fi aspect. So it's to us, it's like an easy yes, but then we also have to make sure that the programmers that commission the equipment can connect to the equipment using Wi-Fi and can program the devices. And just like you guys were talking about before, for remote access, we still need a way to manage those devices remotely. So that's kind of been the main concern now, is to try and make these new technologies work in a way where we can have it sustainable on the floor and manage remote access to those devices to keep the systems running 24/7.
All right, great. So with that, we're going to build on. So let's pull up poll 3B for the audience now. So this poll is really asking who controls your RF spectrum and the spectrum planning in the factory, the IT team, the operations team, or both. So we're going to move on to Andrea while you folks are answering that. So Andrea, as we talk about this plethora of wireless technologies, I'm starting to get the picture that this is a use case driven type architecture. So talk to us a little bit about when you run into customers or talk to customers about selecting what technology is best for me. What kind of advice do you give them?
Yeah, Kevin, and I think touch on that a little bit. There's a variety of technology out there, a variety of wireless technology out there that you can actually use, and it all comes back to what application the customer needs to run in the factory floor, and what devices needs to be connected to the network. What level of application requirements needs to be satisfied. What level of latency, jitter or packet loss the devices can tolerate, and then it depends on where your deployment is. If it is indoor, outdoor, it's a mix. Because you might have your factory floor and then an outdoor area that you need to cover, and where actually your deployment is also from a geography point of view. In terms of a spectrum access. At what level of channel allocation you can manage. And at the end of this process, really, the solution that you pick needs to make sense from an ROI point of view. So the total cost of ownership of the system needs to make sense, and it's actually a loop. And so as touch base on, they were trying one technology and another technology. They were trying to get the best or the benefit of the different technologies, and sometimes it's not just one single technology that does it all. Sometimes you actually need to go with different solutions. And in Cisco we cover from LoRaWAN sensor connectivity all the way to the Wi-Fi connectivity, passing by prior 5G and the UWB technology. So the idea is it really depends on the application, and we start from there and satisfying the requirements.
Okay, so that's awesome. Now let's take a little bit of a snapshot and think about one of those most recent customers that you've worked with, and talk about the technology a bit and why it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of case studies or recent project that we deployed, but there is one in particular that I have in mind that I would like to talk about. It's a big car manufacturer, and they needed to deploy a larger number of AGVs for the assembly line. Instead of using conveyor belts, they're now moving on AGVs, to move the car chassis, throughout the manufacturing floor. And so they needed to connect all these AGVs, for to be able to move them, operate them, but also to be able to safely stop them in case they needed to. And so they went through the process that we just described. They tried Wi-Fi and they had some hiccups with the Wi-Fi technology. They were thinking to use also prior 5G, but then it was a complete shift in their paradigm in terms of network architecture. And so we proposed a UWB to them, ultra reliable wireless backhaul, and they tried out, and we were able to achieve exactly what they wanted. Having all the entire fleet of AGVs connected to the network, and they had amazing uptimes in the production, and so we really nailed that, and helped the customer succeed on that deployment.
That's great. So with that, let's go to another poll here to wrap our session up, and then I'll close this up here with some parting comments here. So let's go to poll number 4. And this is really an offer from us, and it's no obligation. It's totally free, but we want to be able to partner with you. So would you like for someone in manufacturing expertise inside Cisco to reach out to you to have a conversation? And please let us know. We'll come back. We'll take a look at those results offline, but would love to be able to partner with you on this journey. It's a critical journey. So as we go into this, we have a toolkit that we bring to bear, and we'll talk about this and why we think it's so important. But industry-leading industrial switch platforms of all form factors, all power draws, all ruggedized or IP ratings, if you will. Layering on top of that core infrastructure is the notion of our industrial security and visibility aspect, as well as the secure equipment access that Paul talked about a little bit ago. Layering on what Andrea and Dino had talked about is a complete portfolio of wireless to lead us into that advanced connectivity. And if you have remote assets and various other that require connectivity, another mobility that we mentioned was 4G, 5G. Those could be either asset connectivity for that 5G on the plant floor or for remote facilities, if you will. There's a whole notion of the edge intelligence, the data control plane, and that I would akin that to really thinking of that as that fog computing aspect where we can help you process data at the edge at large numbers. There's also the embedded manufacturing aspect of this. So if you have machine builders out there that want to embed Cisco switching, Cisco wireless, Cisco routing inside the machine, then there's a program to all that. And then wrapping around that is the management aspect that we bring to bear from management automation with control on both cloud and on-prem. So this is a complete toolkit. And I think I'm the most excited about this that I have been ever. I have been in your shoes as a manufacturer. And having a complete toolkit to look at an environment like this is super important. So it's our belief that only Cisco has that ability to provide that security end-to-end business communications. And we're taking our history on the IT side of the business, and it's a cross architecture play. And we're plugging in our industrial IoT basis there to actually bring a comprehensive solution. And as we talked about with Industry 4, we've got to merge that IT OT environment. That means that we have to have the technology cohesion on both sides to pull those together. And that's what we really think that we're bringing as a cross architecture play to connect the businesses truly end to end. So with that being said, I do want to tell you where you can go and get started on this journey. And there's several places. So there's some URLs that are posted here and some documents about, truly industrial automation, how that we can secure the infrastructure, concepts on wireless, the industrial portfolio. And then there's one really important one that's not listed here that I want to introduce to you, and that's the Cisco Validated Design, or we call it for short CVD. That is where we take these solutions, build them out in scale, test operating systems, test configurations. It is the how-to guide for industrial automation. So love to talk to you about that, because that is a complete how-to guide. Really gets into the weeds on the technology and implementation, but it's us being able to test drive and give you results back there as well. So with that being said, I'll close with the comments today. I do want to thank everybody for joining us on behalf of Cisco WWT. We want to think about, how we can go through and help each other as we go on this journey, and how we can come along beside you to actually assist in this journey as well. So with that being said, I think we have some more time here, a quick 3 minutes, I think, if there's some specific questions. And Vivek, if you're out there, if there was some that you want to maybe just to address live. And Dino, I didn't leave you out on purpose, but thank you to E80 as well, on behalf of E80 as well, for joining us. So Vivek, are there any questions out here that we want to talk about real quick? We have a lot that have been answered. And I think you see the ones that are published. Yeah, one that come in here a few minutes ago about checklists that we can actually go through to help you do the right things and determine, how well that they've integrated their priority and process. So is there a checklist or a guide or recommendation? And Paul, that may be where the CVD really comes into play, is being able to build structure around that, to making sure that where to go and actually build, am I doing the right things, or have I hit all my marks?
The CVD does definitely give you kind of like, a large set of, it gives you a large set of recommendations, design options, kind of like identify what are some of your key requirements, and then help you design, deploy, and operate, production networks and production cybersecurity capabilities in the environment. So I think that's a good place. I don't know if it's a one-page checklist, but it's definitely full of lots of good recommendations and options in terms of how to deploy wired, wireless, cybersecurity, all the way down into the machine level of connectivity into the production environment.
Thanks, Paul. And one thing that I did fail to do is let's pull up the results for 3A and 3B really quick. We didn't look at those wireless polls, and I apologize for that. So if you could pull up the results for 3A. And which wireless technologies do we use in the manufacturing? Overwhelmingly, it's Wi-Fi, over 50%. There's an increasing number of, it looks like P5G bringing up as second, ultra reliable wireless and others. And then there's some out there that, still have trust factor around wireless, the security, and its specific availability and uptime. So let's pull up the final poll question of 3B. Who controls the RF spectrum planning in your factory? fairly an overwhelming, well, I'd say an overwhelming margin around the IT, which we would expect. And then there is some OT folks. Surprisingly, this is where we're starting to see the collaboration. They're kind of coming together. So that's really nice to see. But I would love to get to a point here when we start planning these networks and design where the green is the majority. But obviously it's an evolution, and it's a journey that we're going to have to take collectively together. So with that being said, we are truly out of time. So thanks everybody for joining us today. And as you see the latest pop-up here, please rate this session. Let us know how we're doing. And reach out to us. We'd love to get feedback. We'd love to partner with you and figure out how we can take you into that next Industry 4.0 journey and beyond. Thank you very much.